Hi, hi. Welcome to North of 48 on November the 22nd. Hope you're having a good week. 0 degrees Celsius, so that's 32 degrees Fahrenheit. Soon to be the 23rd, but it's still the 22nd for now. Last Sunday, we had the Grey Cup game, Canadian Football League, and Toronto Argonauts won over the Winnipeg Blue Bombers 24-23. That was an upset. If the Blue Bombers would have won, they would have won 3 times in a row and then been on track to be called a dynasty. And the last time that was to happen was 5 by the Edmonton Eskimos. 5 in a row. So, Toronto Argonauts win. Actually, the viewers in Canada were up from last year, so that's a good sign. I like the Grey Cup. I like the Canadian Football League very much. I want to talk to you a little bit about in Calgary, layoff notices served to nearly all unionized workers at Calgary Loblaw Distribution Center. Now, Loblaws is a big corporation, and they own Superstore, Dominion Stores, Real Canadian Superstores, Shoppers Drug Mart, T&T Supermarkets. They own Extra Foods, No Frills Food, and President's Choice Financial, and the Wholesale Club of Ontario, Western Canada and Nova Scotia. So these guys have made high earnings this year and last year, especially with COVID. They're primarily a grocery chain. And at their distribution center, layoff notices are going out to the unionized workers there. The union representing these workers at Loblaws in Calgary says nearly all of its members received layoff notices in the midst of contract negotiations. So they were trying to deal with a contract, and they've been without a contract since June. According to the Teamsters local union 987, 535 members work at the distribution center, and 527, nearly 99%, were served a notice. Their layoff notification is in preparation. They're ramping down or a potential lockout labor dispute, said John Taylor, who's a business agent with the Teamsters. Now, these layoff notices followed 2 rejections this month of the company's latest contract offer. The members have been without an agreement after the contract expired on June 6th, like I was saying. And the union says some of its members work at the center earn less than the $22.40 an hour, which is recognized as the acceptable living wage in Calgary. Now, I just find that weird, because you would think this would be a $28, $30 an hour job. In my opinion, especially with the price of groceries now. Have you seen that? And the incredible profits these chains are making. So it's not going to the farmer. It's either cut out by the middleman, but a lot of the profits going straight to the companies. So the unions actually, they're not looking for financial gains. They would like to get better shifts according to seniority, which is, I don't see a problem with that. They had it in the agreement 6 years ago, and it got removed in the last round of bargaining for whatever reason. Well, I guess the company could play favorites then, right? So their members wanted that back in the agreement, and there's no monetary costs involved, and they have not taken a strike vote yet. They haven't applied for a strike vote because they don't want to go on strike. They want to sit down and negotiate a deal. So Loblaws comes out and says, well, we're going to lay you guys off. In what way is that? Are you looking at negotiating a fair deal for both sides then? You're not. And these companies, they're just playing friggin' games. So, of course, there's always 2 sides to a story. So there's a report from Dalhousie University's Agri-Food Lab. It was released in September, and it compared the year-end profit margins of the 3 major chains, Loblaw, Metro, and Empire Company, which owns Sobeys in Canada, over the past 4 years, and found they stayed relatively consistent, leaving little public evidence of greedflation. But they continue to see their sales and profits rise in the midst of record high inflation. I totally know that during COVID, a lot of people went grocery shopping instead of going out. So the revenues increased dramatically, but so have the costs of good, says the report. And so Loblaws gross profit margin was 3.76% at the end of 2021. Remember, that was a banner year. And that's up only slightly from 3.57 posted in 2018. And similarly, Empire's Sobeys margin also grew less than 1 basis point over the same period. And they're seeing the same results in the U.S. So they're saying the food items have gotten more expensive. Bakery goods are up 13.6% since last year. Prices of other food products also rose faster. Eggs are up 15.8% and fresh fruit up 11.7%. Now, just hold on. The soaring prices are having an impact on shopping habits, with a recent survey finding more than 2/3 of Canadians attributing their financial stress to sticker shock at the grocery store. Ain't that the truth? The price of beef, man. In their latest earnings call over the last 2 months, the heads of Loblaws, Metro, and Empire have lamented that rising food costs have shifted buying habits. They're saying customers are sticking to shopping lists and avoiding impulse buys and gravitating towards lower-cost house brands. And they also said labor shortages have softened growth. Well, here at their plant in Calgary, they're going to have 500 and odd people short of labor. Like, I have no idea what these guys are thinking. Yet all three of these companies have seen their sales and profits continue to increase, according to their quarterly earnings report. Revenues for Loblaws in the second quarter of this year were $12.85 billion. $12.85 billion in a quarter, in 3 months. They made that amount in revenue. It's an increase of $356 million, or 2.9%, compared with $12.49 billion last year in the same quarter. So adjusted profits, because things are expensive, for 3 months ending June 18th was $566 million, up from $464 million in the same quarter last year. Now, you could say that's a 1.69% increase or 2.9% increase. $464 million they made profit in 3 months. This year, they made, in those same 3 months, $566 million. The heck? They're making a profit. I mean, millions in profits. Their pharmacy sales have increased. It's hard to find cough or Neocitrin or Tylenol, actually, in a lot of the stores right now, which should be an investigation on. Now, a proper investigation by the Competition Bureau of Canada would shed more light on these practices in the industry, including how food processing, transportation, and companies in the food industry impact costs and profit margins. So it's my feeling that even if they're making more money, I bet you the managers are getting more profit, more shares, and share buybacks, which should be illegal. It's dreadful, the amount of money that these companies make, and then they go buy their shares back, and because they bought it, their share price goes higher. It's ridiculous, and there's normal people. Look, if you can't make $23 an hour in Calgary, you're not at a normal living wage to live in Calgary. And these Loblaw workers make under that. Some of them do, and they're being laid off. Shame. Shame on Loblaws as far as I'm concerned. there's no shame with them at all. The amount of profits they're making, millions, and they can't afford to pay a living wage to their labor people. Now, it would be nice in a fantasy world that these people with shares go down and vote and say that, no, these workers you have to treat better. But most of the cases, the companies have the controlling interest of the shares, so they can overrule any of the shareholders, unless you buy the whole company out, like Elon Musk did with Twitter. How's that going? Are you on Mastodon yet? On Twitter? Maybe you're on both. Mastodon, the new Twitter. Well, not really, but a lot of people have went there. I don't twit or tweet. And I don't mast or Mastodon. At this point, Facebook. Yay. So anybody interested in the province of Alberta, in the country of Canada, please note that it has a new premier, Jason Kenney. The premier of Alberta had to step down after a no confidence vote. He is a trailer park alumni. If you've seen a picture of him, you will instantly know what I'm talking about if you've seen Trailer Park. Now we have Alberta Premier Danielle Smith. She's came up with controversial statements before because she was a media personality, and she said, basically some batshit crazy things, and she's still at it. And now, if you know, for Canada and the provinces about healthcare, very touchy subject. She has replaced the committee or the board of healthcare in Alberta, and she's put it in charge for one person. Now, we've seen that before. It may be a good idea. I don't know. Not yet. But here's some of her comments. Premier Smith hints at user fees, co-pays, and privatization for healthcare. Oh, my God. She says, once people get used to the concept of paying out of pocket for more things themselves, then we can change the conversation on healthcare. There are major problems right now confronting Alberta's healthcare system, and Danielle Smith is going to user fees and co-pays and privatization and slightly delisting services covered by our current health insurance by redefining them. So her biggest take is she wants to reimagine or reinvent government to be more like a for-profit corporation. She calls for Alberta immediately to permanently wean Albertans off their energy royalty dependence. The price of oil goes up, the more money Alberta makes, but the more money Canada makes too. She wants to combine spending cuts and investment revenue generated by the money saved would clear away Alberta's deficits. Now, okay. Now, she wrote this before she was premier, and before she was in a position where she needed to buy Alberta's votes with their own money. So it's fair to say her proposed spending cuts won't see the light of day unless her party wins the next election, which is May 30th, 2023. The next step in closing the gap in healthcare funding, she continues, or says, is she wants to have the assistance of a professional number cruncher to generate $4 billion from new user fees. Now, Alberta went away from we used to pay a monthly fee. It was $150 for a family, $75 for an individual, which is not bad. A lot of Americans would like to pay that. And all the provinces that I know of right now have done away with it. And so it's just paid through our taxes. Remember, we're still paying. It's not free health care. This country pays for its health care. We do so out of our taxes or our tax revenues or our memberships. So Danielle Smith also says we can no longer afford universal social programs that are 100% paid by taxpayers, she argues. The only option is to allow people to use more of their own money to pay their own way and to use the power of innovation to deliver better services at lower cost. She talks about a patient-centered healthcare system, and she constantly does say about this. She means choice as you can have choice if you have the money to pay for access, and patient-centered doesn't quite mean what it sounds like either. What the government needs to do, she says, is create matching health spending accounts for all Albertans. The government should pledge to match up to $375 per person and challenge individuals and employers to do the same. And she says by taking responsibility for their health and giving people the means to do so, it should translate into less pressure on the hospital system and better chronic care management, which will bring costs down. She also says, once people get used to the concept of paying out of pocket for more things themselves, then we can change the conversation on healthcare. I think the conversation that way would be old people and other people just won't go see the doctor till it's too late. Granted, there's some people who go to the doctor for everything. And that's a different conversation. There's a lot of people who don't go to the doctor only when they need to. And part of the beauty of the Canada system is going for preventive health care. That's why Canadians are taller than Americans currently and healthier. Preventative services. So she says, instead of asking what services can the government delist, we would instead be asking what services are paid for directly by government and what services are paid out of your health spending accounts. So we're all going to have these friggin' health spending accounts. It just gets to be a complicated mess. I've seen this before. However, her view is that the entire budget for general practitioners, doctors, should be paid from health spending accounts, she continued. If the government funded the account to $375 a year per person, that's the equivalent of 10 trips to a general practitioner. So she says there's no argument that this would compromise access on the basis of ability to pay. She says there is no argument on that. Well, she wants to take it one step further. She says she thinks it's time to redefine universality. If we establish the principle of health spending accounts, then we can also establish co-payments. So I'm trying, if she was here in front of me right now, I would say, Danielle Smith, the Republicans of the USA want their talking points back. She says it doesn't need to be onerous, and it could be on a sliding scale. Oh, and here we go, more complicated. No, right now the system kind of works. What our problem with our system right now is that we haven't put the money into training nurses, and then we've gotten nurses from other countries to come in instead of training our own nurses here and paying them a fair wage. So we take in, let's say, people from the Philippines, really nice. My dad had a Filipino nurse, but she wasn't a RN, which gets paid at the top of the scale, should be like a general nurse or a helper, not getting paid as much as a regular registered nurse. You see my point? Now, there may be that it's okay that we should have more kind of general nurses instead of registered nurses. I'm not sure, but you should be still making a good wage. And we're all getting older in this country, right? We're going to need some good nurses. But I suggest we can train our own nurses as well. Yeah, I mean, thank God if you came over here and you've got a job as a nurse, come to Canada, and, good on you. I got no problem that way. But your wage should be higher. And this is the thing, is a person who is an immigrant to a country should get paid the same wage as a Canadian who's in the country. If we can do that, then companies can also look at saying, well, we have We have people here who could be nurses. Perhaps we should train them. Yeah, perhaps. Now, Alberta Premier Danielle Smith, she also wants to bring in the Alberta Sovereignty Act. This would give Alberta the authority of the legislature to refuse provincial enforcement of specific federal laws or policies that violate the jurisdictional rights of Alberta under the Constitution of Canada or Charter of Rights and Freedoms. Now, I just want to make it clear to the listeners. Each province has that right. They have a notwithstanding clause. They can refuse some federal legislation, but it's supposed to be used rarely. Unfortunately, Ontario is starting to use it willy-nilly. You do not need the Alberta Sovereignty Act, but it really sounds good. Another thing she wants to do is bring in a Alberta-owned police service. And she's putting money towards that. And lordy, help us all who live in Alberta. Your taxes are going to go up. Now, it costs more than having the RCMP here. Has there been problems with the RCMP patrolling our smaller towns and the rural? Yes, there has. We need more in there. Instead of reaching out to come to a deal with the Royal Canadian Mounted Police to have more people in certain districts, she says, screw it, we're going to have our own police service. Well, this has been thought about before. Now, Ontario has their own. Quebec, I believe, has their own. We're not that big. I think we're a little over 6 million people in the province of Alberta. And it's a big province. For us to pay for our own police service, start from scratch, is going to be huge and a major project. So these are some of her ideas. So on May 30th of next year, I can almost tell you there'll probably be an NDP government again in Alberta, the way things are going. I don't know if Danielle, she didn't strike me as being like this before. It's like she's throwing raw meat out to her constituents. I'm not sure, but I mean, if you watch U.S. politics and watch the way they go, I mean, some of this stuff is drifting across the border, and it's infected our own politicians. I almost think we should almost shut off all the political news coming from the United States. That would be kind of nice and probably better for everybody's sanity. However, it is what it is. You're going to try things to gain your popularity. Now here, Danielle Smith, all you have to do is be a conscientious person and help with the health care system besides trying to blow it up. Work with the RCMP and quit saying batshit crazy things, and you could probably be reelected again in your government. But you got some batshit crazy people in your party too as well. So, I'm not going to even go into it. It's political. I'm just saying, Danielle, look, calm down. Or else Rachel Notley of the NDP will be our next premier after you. And I like Rachel, actually. Her dad was very renowned in the province. He was like the one of 3 NDP people through the 70s. And her dad died in a plane crash while he was going out to look at his constituents. And Premier Peter Lougheed at the time was actually supposed to be friends with Grant Notley. So may he rest in peace. Just saying, politics nowadays, it all comes down to a managing thing, right? So we're looking at Calgary, Loblaws. They don't want to pay their people a little more, or they don't want to change the shifts. They don't want to give any power up, right? And then you got politicians who are coming out with this red meat for the masses. And I can't say that it actually works in Alberta. I have no idea where this will work. A lot of farmers are getting really ticked off with Danielle Smith as well. And rightly so. I mean, she's just out announcing all sorts of crap. We just want a province in the country of Canada that runs good, that has a good healthcare system, that doesn't overly tax you, and that has decent roads. The roads in this province are just crap all of a sudden. We used to have the best roads. We used to put money towards the roads because there's a lot of transportation through this province. And a lot of, especially with the oil and gas sector and with grain. And we're not doing a good job on that anymore. That's how you get reelected, fix the roads. And before I leave you, it is the 273rd day of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. And how's it going? Well, you know, the Ukrainians are doing quite a lot, but they've had, the Russians have been shelling their cities. 100 missiles, I believe, day before yesterday. They've got 40% of the power grid is out of order. I'm going to suggest to you, we're getting pretty close to war crimes here by shelling peaceful cities. I believe that's something in the UN Charter. And you know what it is? It's saying that you guys are pissing me off with this. I'm from Putin, right? This is just, I'm imagining, you guys are pissing me off. Take this. He did the same thing in Chechnya, and just bombed the heck out of the cities and stuff like that. So, you know, for a nation he thinks that's supposed to be his brothers and his sisters, and Ukraine is one nation with Russia. Well, you're sure beating the heck out of it right now, buddy. And it's getting cold. It's about 0 degrees Celsius now. It's November, and the rain's in the north and in the south. But, you know, a lot of people dying in there. I ran across something interesting with the Polish missile. So if you were a fan of news or a fan of, if you listen to Ukraine news, you'll note that a missile went into Poland and killed 2 people. Zelensky, the president of Ukraine, says it wasn't a Ukrainian missile, and other people said, well, it was a Ukrainian missile going to shoot a Russian missile that missed and ended up in Poland. It was an accident. Russians still caused it by putting the missile. But there was somebody on the internet, and his theory is this: why would NATO, if they were all primed to go fight Russia, as Putin says, why wouldn't they use this as an opportunity to say that a Russian missile has fallen onto NATO territory, therefore NATO can get involved? Thank God they didn't say that. But, so people are saying Zelensky's lying, other people are saying the Russians are lying, or the Americans are lying. And part of the problem is, well, it was an S-300, which the Ukrainians are using, but it's also the Russians are using, and it's a Soviet made engine on that, and it could have been made in the Ukraine, you know, whatever. Theoretically, this could be just say, okay, Ukraine, okay, just say you did it so we don't have to get into a big war with Russia. I don't know. It's a theory, you know, so till somebody can tell us. Right now, I'm going with the fact that the Ukrainians probably missed a missile and it ended up in Poland. But really, the strength of the argument from the Ukraine government, and now you don't hear a word about it. So I think it's going to be one of those things after the war. We will find out. As I'm saying this, I'm going to wish you a good week. You take care, and we'll talk real soon. Bye.